Jill Dyers, Chairman of the IOBSA Board, welcomes you to the IOBSA webinar, the first in a series of events dedicated to connecting with our members and community to share and discuss relevant topics in the banking industry. Engage with us through the chat, give us your opinions through the polls, share your experience on social media platforms. Most importantly, enjoy the next hour and a half with us.
Thank you so much for that intro. Welcome everybody to the very first webinar by IOBSA. This is one of many webinars that we plan to have to discuss very topical issues in terms of our banking industry. My name is Penny Mannya and I will be facilitating the discussion today. Please also make sure you heard in the video that this conversation can only be great if we all are involved and interacting with us. So, please use the polls. Please also use the comment section and interact with each other as well. But later on, there will be a WhatsApp number which you can scan using your phone on a QR code to have specific questions directed at our panelists and engage in the robust discussion that is planned for today. Thank you so much for everybody that has joined. For me, I think before I go and introduce our wonderful panelists today, I think at the back of our minds, I'd like to, plant a seed around the different career discussions that I've been having, especially in the banking industry. But I think this kind of, relates to every other career or industry for that matter. And there is an emerging theme, or rather a narrative around the fact that careers are no longer a ladder where essentially, one would want to move upwards, in terms of the career that they've chosen. But I think careers are now starting to become jungle gym. And we really need to look at how we see our careers and the ability for us to move from one area to a different area, just like a normal jungle gym that kids used to play. But nevertheless, I think that's something that I really need you to put at the back of your head. Please ensure that you engage with us. It is really just a conversation. And today's topic is about the evolution of skills that are required currently in the banking industry. We all know that there's been a lot of disruption in any other industry, but I think for today's topic, we are talking about the banking industry. And that disruption comes with the requirement of different skills. And this conversation really specifically wants to focus on what are those skills and how do we then navigate and keep ourselves relevant in the banking industry and to ensure that we are on a journey of acquiring those specific skills. With that said, I will now introduce our panelists. We've got Dr. Roze Phillips, who is a non-executive director for a few organizations, and she's also a director at African Futuristic at GIBS Business School. We've also got Ms. Yoni Titi, who's an MD of Yoni Titi Human Capital Evolution. And my last panelist is Pumeza Ngxiki, who's an associate director, lead HR business partner. Ladies, welcome to today's discussion. It is such a pleasure to have you, and thank you for making the time to talk to us about this particular topic, which I strongly believe that is crucial. And I think our members will, and whoever's dialed is logged in, would definitely agree with us that this topic does deserve a discussion, and we need to pay attention to it, to how do we empower each other as a community in the banking industry around the skills that are required, and whether are we also as leaders and employers providing the right infrastructure in allowing the people to acquire the skills and really be successful in keeping themselves relevant. So I'm going to go straight into the questions. And Dr. Roze, I want to start with you. But before I start, the QR code will go up in the screen, guys. And what you need to do is obviously, scan it. As the panelists are obviously engaging and giving the answers to the specific questions that I have for them, but I'm sure you will probably have, follow-up questions, or, a question that is probably not in my plan. So please make sure that you ask those questions, and I will be looking at the WhatsApp as soon as it comes through, and then I will direct it to the panelist. Dr. Roze, I want to come to you as one of the first questions, right? So in terms of the regulatory landscape, how do you think that it's shaped in terms of the requirements around the skills? And, in your view, what are the future skills that the banking will require?
Well, thanks for that question, Penny, but let me just first also observe all sorts of protocols and say thank you very much to the Institute of Bankers for making this opportunity available for their members and for the banking community at large to really talk about the very important topic of skills for the future. Also, interestingly, you make the statement about the career ladder is no longer there, and you talk about the jungle gym. Hopefully, it's more about the gym building the future fitness than it is about the jungle. So going straight into the regulatory changes that have happened, and I guess I want to start the answer in the following way. I think that in South Africa, we can be very comfortable, is maybe a strong word, but very proud of our banking institutions. And so anybody working within the banking sector, you've chosen yourself a good career. Because banking sectors across the world have really struggled for the safety of banking, the regulatory frameworks of banking, but not in South Africa. We've always had a very, very robust banking system. You think about 2008, we survived the 2008 crisis. And as much as we're still suffering from the aftermaths of COVID and our economic crisis that will last for much longer than we would like to hope happens, we are resilient. So I really would like to rely on our resilience as a starting point of confidence that we are in the right place. And now we just need to think about our skills. So in terms of the regulatory changes that really, for me, shape the way we should think about it, I think about just 2008 and what has happened then, where there was such a lot of concern about, firstly, the safety of the banking system, but then also the way in which bankers conduct themselves. Somebody once said that if Lehman Brothers was Lehman Sisters, then maybe they would still be with us today, but they're not, because their conduct in the banking sector globally was under question. And so in South Africa, we've converted from just looking after the safety of money to also looking at how we conduct ourselves. So it's not just what you do, and this is important for skills. It's not just what you do, it's also how you do it. And it's a skill statement that I'm making here. It's not just a how do banks regulate themselves statement or what are the policies that bankers now need. It's also the skills that we need, because the what skills might be skills related to banking, particularly technical skills, or if you are in an enabling function, human resources skills or risk skills, compliance skills, ethics skills, all of those functions that make a bank what it is, right? Because a bank is not just those people who handle money. It's a much more broader ecosystem, technology skills, etc. But those technical skills, those technology skills, those coding skills are the what. The how we conduct ourselves, whether we are responsible bankers, whether we are ethical bankers, those kinds of requirements require more than just intelligence. They require emotional intelligence. They require relationship skills. They require a recognition that we must think about sustainability. So we must think about revenue, but we must think about resilience. We must think about the cost of capital, but we must also think about the cost of carbon. We must think about health. We must think about wealth, but we must also think about health. So those are the changes that are happening now in the world of work, specifically in the banking sector, driven by what our regulators are seeing as things that we would have to do, coupled with some of the major innovations that are happening in the world at large.
Sure. That was a mouthful. Thank you so much, Dr. Roze. And I think, I'm hearing the need for the actual technical skills in the changes that are happening, but I'm also hearing the soft skills that come with that from what you're saying, because we are quite a heavily governed sort of sector. But with that said, the soft skills and how we drive our people is what really makes us successful. I want to quickly, continue on this. Pumeza, you were nodding quite a bit there when Roze was going. I almost felt like you really are agreeing with us and you want to bring something else. Is there anything else you want to add, please?
I don't think there's really much to add. I'm just aligned with what Roze was sharing, particularly when it comes to skills. Post-COVID, you'll know that businesses now have prioritized a different set of skills. And what I also agree with is the fact that when you're looking at talent now, we're no longer boxing people and saying this person is HR, only looking for the technical skills in HR. You want now to recruit people with a diverse set of skills.
The big change for me that happened in our journey at Absa, and I hope nobody mind, we're all part of the banking sector, was when we recognized two things. In order to live a purpose of bringing possibilities to life, we must all buy into the purpose. It's not about whether we're providing banking services. It's about the purpose, which is larger than just banking. It's about bringing possibilities to life. So you've got to have that mindset. The second thing I realized is, as much as we were talking about learning, unlearning, relearning, empowering yourself through learning, what we realized we were coming across as a stumbling block is people didn't actually believe that that was in their hands, that the power to learn was actually their superpower. They thought that and many of us have this, right? That we have a fixed mindset. We believe that we only have so many skills. We believe that we only are so intelligent. We don't believe we could ever be a CEO. We don't believe that we can try different things. We believe there's only one answer, when in fact, what we need to do is learn how to critically ask more questions, be more curious, which is what you're doing, Penny. You're moving from area to area, and what keeps you in the pound seat is you're curious. You're willing to learn. You believe that you can learn. You have that attitude of abundance and not an attitude of scarcity. And in a lot of respects, I blame our education system, which felt like filling a vessel when in fact it should have been about igniting a flame. So yeah, exactly what Yoni is saying, learning to learn and the ability to learn will be the fundamental superpower for all human beings.
Sure. Thank you so much for that comment, Roze. And the compliment to yours truly in the ability to just move around. And I think it speaks to, it really speaks to believing in yourself. It speaks to not limiting yourself in terms of what you can and can't do. While we continue, I just want to double check if we've got Yoni back. If not, Roze, you also touch on the power of understanding what you can do. What role what role does leaders, do leaders play and employers play in igniting? You also speak about igniting, because whilst I've been able to do the jungle gym very nicely and I'm still enjoying it today, I've operated in environments that allowed that learning, and environments that harnessed the need and the ambition to learn. So what role do we as leaders play? And I'm going to direct that, and I'm linking that to what you've said, but I'm actually directing the question at Pumeza to say, what role do leaders and employers play in what Dr. Roze said?
Okay, so you want me to go first?
I'm asking you actually the question, but it stems from what Roze said. Apologies for not being clear.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I think with these changes in the world of work, it's also important to look at the leaders in terms of the leadership behaviors that we need, because those are now different to what we needed in the past. When you're looking at a good leader, with the changes in the world of work, that has also changed. So now we need leaders who would look at talent, not as their own talent and box people to say, this is my talent in my own department. As leaders, we need to look at everyone, or in fact, as people in the organization, as a talent.
Yoni, you seem to be back with us. Are you back?
Be able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear. We can hear
All
you.
right, we'll just have to sacrifice on the video, but there's no good looks you're missing out on. As long as maybe we can get the content instead of the video, it's fine.
All right, happiness, Yoni. I'm happy to have you back. So we will sacrifice on the video, but you were on to something very, very critical and important, and we've since, as we lost you, but we kind of expanded on it. But I want you to finish off what you were saying, because I think you are at the heart of the recruitment process. You have got to you have to kind of screen these candidates for these particular jobs, and the responsibility of marrying the right person to the right job has become more critical. So please continue with the answer.
So thank you very much, Betty. I think where I was at the time was really talking about what we really regard as the full package in an individual. So I was really expressing there that it's not enough to believe that holding a certain qualification and having worked for this company for 5 years. And it touches on what you then spoke about whilst I was trying to reconnect, where you were mentioning that when individuals now have to position themselves, it's almost they've got to demonstrate what is their differentiator. What is the difference between Yoni and Penny? If we've both got a BSc statistics, but there must be a differentiator. And it speaks to also what Dr. Roze spoke about. We're looking for those resilience factors in individuals and demonstrate them in terms of the resilience you've shown in building yourself up and building yourself as a candidate for a particular company. We're also looking for individuals that are really going to be stretching themselves in where we're going in terms of skills. And the fact that you're an HR manager, it does not exclude you from stretching yourself to being more analytical and building your technical skills within that HR space. You need to be able to understand now, in terms of what we're looking for, the company's strategy, where it's going, what are the challenges. You can't only box yourself in to say, I'm a marketing manager. You've got to be a marketing manager that understands the balance sheet, that understands company performance, that understands the strategic intent of that organization. And again, I reiterate, we are now looking for the full package. Before, we were quite content with somebody who comes in, does their job and leaves. But those people will definitely, as we move forward, be left behind. And I think that the COVID itself, which you asked me to just speak on as well, what has it shown us versus before? It stretched very much for us to see what Dr. Roze referred to, that we want to see that emotional resilience in individuals, that higher EQ, that ability to work independently, and want to be able to demonstrate how they can be able to lead remote teams. And that is not very easy. So all of those are now coming to the fore, and only those individuals who can master those will be able to grow into the skill set and also just the package that companies will now be looking for in terms of their future talent. So that's really where we're going. And then coming back to the jungle gym scenario, both myself and you, Penny, can relate. I mean, I did law, I practiced law, and now I'm in recruitment for the last 15 years. It's those individuals who will be able to make a transition from moving out of marketing and going into a role that's completely unrelated to marketing. Globally, they've been able to master this, that they don't require you to go and do a BCom accounting honors to be able to qualify as an accountant in an organization. And we're going to start seeing more of that. And then lastly, what we expect to see in terms of people honing their skills for the future is for them to accept that they'll be taking part in what our term and is globally termed as the gig economy. some of those individuals will no longer be wanting to work for one company at a given time. They may want to actually work for more than one company, of course, not in conflicting industries. And that's what the gig economy will look like, which will allow now individuals to be able to also just travel. That's now becoming important for individuals. Being able to have flexibility of work, that's becoming a very big demand for individuals, and corporates now need to take that into account in basically looking for the top talent.
Yoni, thank you.
May I?
Yes, I will bring you in quickly. I just want to, agree with Yoni in terms of what she's bringing in, especially around the new way of work, in terms of what employers need to now start thinking about, making the work flexible, allowing me to work half day because, I'm a mom and I need to do school runs, traveling you mentioned, and even working for multiple employers, obviously, in the most ethical way. So for me, those are the critical pieces that I'm picking up. I do have another question, but I'm going to allow Dr. Roze to come in and just add on that as well.
Yeah, no, I want to pick up on because I think this is very topical for people, is this notion of the new world of work. And Yoni was touching on it, not so new any longer, right? After
Correct.
2 years, everything is a habit. If somebody came to me and said, I've been working for X for 2 years and I'm still new, I'd say, you can't call yourself new. So the world of work is not new. And the point I want to make here, and you've made it now, Penny, is for the employee, the past 2 years was about how to work differently.
Yeah.
Some of us enjoyed it, some of us didn't. We have to live at home and work at home. We now, everything is integrated, right? Some of us had to sit on the toilet seat to work just to find ourselves a place of peace and quiet, etc., etc. It was tough, but we learned how to manage that. And we found that we've integrated into our family lives more now and recognize the balance. So for employees, the transition back to the old world of work is not necessarily something acceptable. Now, we don't have South African statistics, and it's something I'm working on. I really want to do a survey for South Africa because a lot of the statistics we have about the future of work is really international. Employees want remote work. Employees want hybrid work. But employers want return to the office.
Yeah.
So for me, 2020, 2021 was about employees learning how to work differently. 2022 onwards is going to be about employers and leaders learning how to lead differently. That's going to have to be the focus for 2022 onwards.
Yeah, absolutely spot on there, Roze. Pumeza, do you want to come in as well? Yeah.
In the balance of power, where in the past an employee will come for a job interview and the company will sort of dictate in terms of the working hours, the work arrangement and all of that. But now we've seen post-COVID, the power has shifted a bit where employees will actually define the type of a work model that they're comfortable with. And at times you'll find that people are even willing to give up a job offer if it does not meet their requirements. So it's another shift that is quite interesting. And I think it's also important for leaders to learn and unlearn. That is also for employees as well, because the world of work is changing so much. What you learn and what is relevant today may not be relevant next week or 2 months down the line. So it's also important. You only touched or talked about learning agility. So I think linked to that is also that ability to learn and unlearn so that we can move fast.
Thank you, Pumeza. I think the message really coming strong, from the panelists, guys, is exactly that. Agility is no longer a buzzword. Agility has become critical for us to actually practice. And it requires us to as we've said, it requires us to move with the times around the ways of work, and Roze mentioned something around how employees didn't have a choice but to get on with it and do it. and now it's about employers. And I'm really interested to find out from you guys watching and listening, you know, what is your current situation? Is it where you are being allowed to work or define your way of work, or is it a case where there's an ultimatum of some sort to say you either return to work, or you know, you decide or you're no longer, you know, you're not going to be able to work in this environment? So let's talk about that. Share your insights, guys. Also, don't forget to comment on the site as well, and just engage with each other. If any of you do have questions that are directed at the panelists, I think they've said a mouthful, and for me the thread is clear. We are all agreeing that the shift has happened and the ways of work is different. We are also all agreeing that the skill that is required is no longer the same. The skill set is not only of one type of work that you've done. There needs to be a differentiator between yourself and another candidate who has the same qualification. But we are also agreeing as well, as Dr. Roze said, the resilience has gotten us where we are today. You know, every crisis that the banking industry deals with has been able to deal with. And this is just another one of them that we need to deal with and shift. And I think also talk to me or respond to the issue of the shift of power. The dynamics of power have changed. Do you agree with that? You know, do you still feel more empowered in choosing? What choices do you have? Or do you feel like you actually don't have a choice? Talk to us. Let's see. I'll keep looking at the WhatsApp. But also don't forget that there is a poll. There's polls that are being run on the site, and you know, engage with that as well. And I think your feedback and your insights will allow us to determine what are the topics that we need to address as the banking industry. And instead of, you know, IOBSA deciding what they want to talk about, it's imperative that as members or non-members, you know, what do you want to hear? What are the things that we need to deal with? With that being said, I'm going to go back to my panel. A lot of the stuff that you ladies have mentioned, you know, and when I look at it, it's I want to link it to the psychology. You know, so whilst everything is happening and we're adjusting, you know, there's a lot of adjustments. You know, agility is becoming critical. Let's talk about the psychology and the impact thereof to wanting, you know, to having the need to remain relevant, to having, you know, the ability to deal with the changes, integrate work life, you know, with home. What is that? What do you think the impact of the impact of psychology has on, you know, the impact of that has on the psychology of our employees?
Shall I start?
Yes, please go ahead. It wasn't specifically to anyone. Yoni, you are still with us, even though your video is not on. Am I correct?
I'm here. Thank
you.
Awesome
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very quickly now we get into the jungle part. Okay. Because the next, and Yoni speaks about this quite extensively, the next pandemic is the pandemic of mental health. That is our next pandemic. It is here. We are now always on. It started with our digital world of being always on. Yep. It moved during COVID when we are on Zoom calls from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, barely with time for anything else because there's no break in between, to where we are now, exhausted, burnt out. And those of us that really just started work, that have tried to integrate into the world of work, our young people, our women who still carry the burden of care in the home for family members, for elderly people, for children. Our male colleagues have seen how much women do, especially professional women who work and do work at home for the children. Now that they are in the home and everybody's at home, they see that. So the burden of care on women still high. And now there's this pressure of returning back to work in an environment where the unemployment rate is just escalating. And we've had to live with loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, loss of lifestyles. So what we are struggling with now is a mental health challenge, and we should say that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And I encourage employers, focus as much on the issue of hybrid work, not hybrid work. Yes, this is an important issue to resolve. Vaccination, an important issue to resolve. But please do not undervalue or underestimate the help that is needed in the workplace or in the workspace, wherever we are, around supporting employees with mental health, and for employees to feel safe to say, I am not okay. Because if we don't, the crisis of burnout and mental health will overtake the world of work in a major way.
Cool. Thank you, Roze. Yoni, would you like to add?
Sure. Yeah, I think, Penny, it's honestly about just the psychological safety of talent and employees. And we can't take some helicopter view on it, but we've got to treat it as a significant issue that we go into the detail of it. The adjustment of moving from an environment where we worked in an office setup, and a lot of us thrive, and we thrive on the human interaction, the ability to be at the printer and catch up on our children and what we've been doing on the weekend. Those kind of things have gone away. We can't take them for granted as small things, because they really did energize us to some level or another. They allowed us to share with those colleagues that we really were comfortable with any challenges we may be having, and getting that support. Now moving into a more tech and virtual working arrangement, that's gone away. So even that support structure for employees and for talent, that's gone away. We've had to make adjustments during COVID with regards to our families. And some of these, actually, we don't think of them with the cost that they've come with. I will give you a personal example that I've had to now shift my child to being at daycare longer to allow me to be able to work. And that has a cost implication for me that I'd never factored before. So those things now begin to stretch individuals, even from a financial standpoint. But it's the only way that the employees and the talent in our country is going to be able to grow themselves and be available to their companies to still progress, because there is still performance evaluation in this new way of working. Absolutely. And that's very, very critical. Then secondly, the psychological safety of our individuals, we have to note it does not sit with just human resources because it falls under psychology. It's now the role of leaders, because they now have more closer interaction with the individuals than HR actually has. And they need to see the warning signs before they become something more serious and be more vigilant around that. And it's the role of leadership as much as it's a role of talent and employees to say, just like Dr. Roze said, I am not okay. And it's okay not to be okay. So all of those changes actually matter. And for some, and this is a reality as human beings, and let's call it what it is. For some of us, we've now been able to use previously our world of work as an escape. And that escape now is actually not so there. You are confronted with any challenges in your family, from grandma to grandfather to husband to wife to children, all of those things. I mean, I laughed very deeply when my lawyer told me that his busiest time ever in the year is January. And that's because people have had to spend time with their family, and they recognize the brokenness of it in that time, because they have to sit together at the same time. Now imagine with a new way of working where, yes, you can have the hybrid model of working 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, but you still are now having to be more present in your home space than ever before. It's not the same as where you could go into News Cafe and go grab a burger with your colleagues, and then you at least just take away some stress. Let's be cognizant of it. It's going to be as big a subject as transformation has been in the past.
Thank you, Yoni. Pumeza, do you have something to add on there?
Yeah, I agree with both Roze and Yoni. And for me, what is also important to add is that the approach of one size fits all does no longer work. So the leaders need to understand the diversity of their teams, the diversity of their team members, and what the individual needs of the teams are. And this is also talking to the broader organization in terms of the policies that we put in place, the practices that we put in place, which will define the culture. So we just need to move away from that one size fits all. And I also like what Roze said, that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Because you'll find that in the organization, because most organizations is such a high performance driven culture, people are scared not to be okay because they don't want to be labeled. Even people living with some mental challenges, they are scared to speak up because they don't want to be labeled. So it's time that we have these open conversations. Leaders create the platforms for people to talk openly about this and understand that it's okay not to be okay.
What does it mean to be resilient? What it means to be resilient is to be able to lift yourself up in the face of failure, the ability to experiment. These are things that require a level of self-awareness. So the skills of self-awareness, the skills of emotional intelligence, the skills of recognizing that you have to fill your own glass first before you can help others.
Yeah.
All of those things are part of the leadership journey that we are all on. And so we must learn to code, but we must also learn about our leadership skill, who we are as leaders, and improving our leadership skills for a very, very diverse world that we're living in now, in a very complex and uncertain and volatile world.
Thank you so much, ladies. With so much being said, guys, if there's if there's two things that I'm taking away from what my panelists have just said is the one, it's okay not to be okay. And I think for me that sums it up. It just simply means that we've got to create environments where people are comfortable to say that they're not okay. And that speaks to a lot of things. You know, it speaks to wellness programs, it speaks to their connection and the ability to listen to what your employees are saying. But it also speaks to the trust of one wanting to actually say that they're not okay. And I think the second one for me that Pumeza said is around the, no one size fits all. The ability for you as a leader to identify how each of your team members needs to be treated, how each of your members operate, that is a skill. It is a skill that is highly required now in these changing times, because even virtually, I can imagine how much more difficult that is for you to be able to pick that up, because Yoni also mentioned earlier on, the conversations at the printer, the coffee, grabbing a burger, those were the times where people were connecting and saying, it's actually bad, this is what I'm going through. But virtually, that can be also tough. So the skill set, even not just for leaders, that is a skill set for all of us in the banking industry to learn, because even as peers, even as colleagues, because the team dynamics are now changing, where as a team we would see each other daily and really work on that relationship. And I know the famous thing, has always been that coffee chat. We must meet for coffee. We must meet for coffee. And we do meet for coffee, right? And in that coffee session is how we then learn and understand and really build a relationship. Relationship building has become very difficult. And I speak for myself. I started a new job on the 1st of Feb. And, it's been 4 months. I actually haven't met some of the team members. And the relationship is very awkward, where it's really just more task related at this point. And that's because of the virtual way of working. So really, ladies, I think what you've said is critical. Once again, the two things that, you can share with us, guys, on the WhatsApp, as well as on the comments, to say, what are your takeaways from what they've said? Sean, I do acknowledge the question that you've asked, and I'm going to, you didn't direct it at a specific panelist, and I'm going to ask Sean is asking us, how do we get our staff ready at the banks for the increasing AI? We spoke a lot about digital transformation. You did say earlier, Dr. Roze, that there are so many changes, and through these changes, we've got to be resilient. We've got to keep on keeping on, because market share targets are here still, even with what we are going through. So and you also said we can learn the coding, because that's actually the skill that's required now, but we need to learn other skills. AI is obviously, it's increasing. It won't stop, and it will continue increasing as the world of service improves. How do we get our staff ready? It also speaks about that keeping relevant to the skills that are required.
I'll start. Thanks for that question, Sean, because I think it is important that we ask that question. In my mind, every single human being right now must recognize that we are working and living in a technology-oriented world. Everything we do has some sort of technology capability, requirement, understanding in it. And I wish I actually took gaming more seriously, to be honest with you, because I thought that gaming was a waste of time. Now I wish I was a gamer, because the world of the future is the world of the gamer. They understand virtual reality. They will understand the metaverse. I don't understand it, and I wish I did. So, and that's the same for the banking sector. We don't work for banks. We work for technology companies. So technology skills are fundamental. So first and foremost, I think one of the things that especially our learning community in the banks can help us do is to introduce courses around learning to code. And even if it's an hour of code, and this is not just for somebody who works with money, whether you are in HR, data analytics, people analytics are going to be just as fundamentally important for you to do your job as it is for somebody in the bank to understand how blockchain works, to be able to understand cryptocurrencies. It's all got to do with data. So courses like 1 hour of code, for example, understanding how cloud works, but really providing for every single person at all levels in the bank some level of understanding of how technology works. Now, we're not all going to be technologists. Some of us are artists and some of us are scientists. But the fundamental understanding that there's a new language, and that is the language of data that applies to all areas of banking, HR, finance, legal, compliance, and front office banking is fundamental for all of us to get a handle on. And I think it starts as young as we possibly can, from childhood onwards, actually. But it's not a skill that you can't learn. It's a skill that you can learn. And then do hackathons, because I think through doing hackathons, these are also other ways in which people learn about the value of fintech and how to experiment with technology. So those would be the two suggestions I would make.
Awesome. Thank you for your suggestions, Dr. Roze. Yoni, any comments for Sean there?
I think, Sean, there's also just, I'm talking to individuals right now themselves, and there's a fear too much from them in terms of job safety when it comes to AI. And the attitude needs to change to be the one of seeing the opportunity than living the fear. And that's what I referred to in the first question you asked me about attitude. And that's the willingness to stretch and to learn. And I think it's about creating that feeling to them about willingness to upskill themselves than focusing on the fear of job loss, that my job can get replaced. Because once they're living on that fear, and it's also got to be done in a way that is non-threatening, but encouraging, that for you to be part of the winning team, let's adjust to this. It's about making it exciting, because people are not naturally keen on change. And it's giving them the ability to see it in a positive light than a threatening way that I may lose my job. I equally support the idea of it being introduced gradually, and that's how you make it interesting as well, that it does not become overwhelming. And it's everybody through the entire value chain that needs to adopt into it. It's not just for the IT individuals in the organization. It's about HR, it's about support functions seeing light in terms of AI themselves. So I think, Sean, if I'm answering your question, I think leadership needs to be able to rope the organizational talent towards excitement. It must be seen as this is where we are going. This is how it will benefit, our organization, and sell it from a positive than a threatening light.
Yeah, we got you there, Yoni. Pumeza.
Yeah, I think, from my side, Sean, very similar to what Yoni said. We've experienced it in the organization recently, the fear. So it talks to how you manage the change. So as leaders in the organization, together with HR, we need to ensure that we take employees along the journey, because different people react differently to change. So you need to understand your people. You need to take them through the change journey. Try to sell the benefits to them. Have the conversations with them. Allow them the space to ask questions whenever there is a change initiative that is being implemented. And then I also agree with the upskilling and reskilling. And you can also get people, maybe people externally, to come in and be part of that team, even if it's on a project basis or for a short-term period, to transfer the skills to the individuals outside of formal courses. Or you can even get people within the organization who are digital savvy to be part of a team and transfer the skill to the team.
Thank you so much, Pumeza. Thank you so much, Pumeza. I think, Sean, hopefully your question is answered there. But for me, in summary, there's once again two things that I'm getting from what the panelists have said. There's a need for employers or leaders to create the environment that allows that readiness and that creates the space of learning. And there's also the responsibility of us as employees to ensure that, one, you've got to be willing to learn, because, no matter how much conducive environment you operate in for you to learn, if the willingness to learn is not there, I don't think that's going to be successful. So there needs to be a willingness for us as employees to want to learn, and the need for employers to create that. So it's really a partnership. But as an HR person, as an operations person, data has always been a thing, because that is what you use to make your business decision. This is exactly for me the same as people saying we've always done this in this way. Whenever I go into a new area, I always ask, why are we doing this? And the answer is, we've always done it this way. But I've since understood that we've always done it this way. It doesn't really speak to they've always felt it, or it's about the data they were using in terms of what they needed to be doing. So I really resonate with what the ladies are saying around, turn the fear into a willingness. Be open-minded about learning, and look around you and look at your skills set right now, and understand what other jobs can you do that are currently available with the skill set that you've got. And I think for me that's what the takeaway is. Guys, continue. Yeah. Yes, please come in.
I don't want to be a machine. And in fact, most of my working life, I felt like I was a machine. AI and everything we have with machine learning is going to give us perfect answers. But who's going to ask the right questions? The curious human. We are going to ask the right questions. So it is the time for humans now, actually. All we need to do is understand how to work with the machines. Machines cannot be humans. So it is our time, it is our place. So Sean, don't be scared. Think about how you differentiate.
Guys, that's the tagline. It is the right time to be a human being, right? And Roze, that leads me to Yoni. Sorry, do you want to come in?
I just wanted to come in,
Yeah.
and this is one point that really stands out for me. You know, when years back living abroad, and I used to phone a call center, and everything's like, say your name, and then it just lacked that human touch, and I was so uncomfortable. I'm like, I hope nobody sees that I'm talking. Like, who's this person behind? You know, like what we've called Veronica in terms of GPS.
Yeah.
But the point I want to make is that South Africa is still also a society that lacks human touch. And we did mention this before, that we're very attached to relationships in our country. So all of this will come in gradually. And it's also going to be a learning from even our stakeholders, our clients as banks, that they need to adjust equally. So this learning and adjustment is much more bigger than just your employees.
Yeah.
It's going to be bigger for all of us, because you're almost feeling a bit like uncomfortable, because you're used to talking to somebody and you ask the unjani and, oh, can you also, yeah, just that human touch and that human aspect.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment for all of us and not just the employees
Yes,
themselves.
yes. Absolutely, Yoni. Thank you so much. And I think, you know, both what you're saying around that human touch and what Roze is saying, to say, I like that. I like that term, guys. And I think I'm going to steal it. Hashtag, it's the right time to be human, because, you know, being human, it's so unique. Like you said, if, you know, machine learning can do what it needs to do, but who's asking the right questions? Which leads me to my next question. I want to tackle the issue of influence, you know, because that's also a skill that we require, and how has that shifted, you know, in obviously the way of work that has changed. You know, we work in cross-functional teams. You know, the different roles. You know, we no longer have roles that are, you know, kind of, you know, going up, but we've got roles that are kind of depth and sideways, and that requires, you know, that requires individuals to be able to influence their peers in order to deliver a particular goal. How are you guys seeing the shift and the change? And I'm going to start with Pumeza this time around to talk to me about the shift in terms of the skill of influencing when it comes to delivery.
Okay. Yeah, that is becoming an important skill, because now we want people to work in collaborative teams, and meaning that people now have to deliver through other people who don't necessarily report to them.
Yes.
That is why then it becomes important to form those relationships. That's why even though we're working remotely, there is still that need to come together in a work environment to still have those face-to-face connections. One, that is what is going to help to build the relationships. That's how people build relationships. Another one that is important is to understand each other's world. When you're working with people cross-functionally, you can't just focus and have interest in your own world, in what you do. You need to understand and appreciate what other people do, what challenges they are faced with. Again, it's going to talking to other people to understand their world. Establish ways of working. Take interest in their world. So when they faced with challenges, you're also part of the solution, and you're not there just to criticize or to question. You work in partnership as a team. So that is another skill. I think Yoni mentioned this in the beginning, the teamwork, the communication, the creativity. That is now some of the skills that are required to be able to influence and work in these cross-functional teams.
Great stuff. Yoni, do you want to take that as well?
You know, I like the word that you're using is influence. And it goes back to that lack of the interaction with people physically in this new world now. You can ask yourself, how am I going to influence these cross-functional teams from a distance when I don't really have that kind of relationship when I see them and they get to know who I am from a leadership perspective? So when I've got certain deliverables, I am read in the right manner in terms of what I'm requesting. It's going to take the maturity of leaders to be able to navigate different approaches for different situations and for different teams. It's not going to be just one approach to say, okay, this is the manner in which I can influence. It's going to be say, I'm going to use authentic leadership in trying to influence these teams. And authentic leadership is really about the ability to understand who are you working with and get to understand those teams that you have to work for. You will have to show up to be able to influence. So people will need to also have the kind of respect in that leader, depending on the sense of how he leads those teams, in how they set deadlines, in how the deliverables are actually articulated and the expectations also equally articulated and the deadlines of all of those, and to be able to lead teams with fairness, with integrity, and with a sense of empathy, understanding, and yet still be a leader who's decisive. Those will be the ways in which to influence.
Thanks, Yoni. Roze?
Maybe 3 things to add. Number 1 is you can, if you're a leader, you can work on the business and you can work in the business. So you need to be able to do both. So be in the trenches, lead by example, and show people that you are there with them, because you can't influence if people don't believe that you actually understand their living experience and their lived experience. Number 2, the worst possible influencers are the ones that don't listen. The ones that pretend to listen but don't listen. There's passive listening, there's active listening. But the point is you have to be able to give space for people to share their views in, as Yoni said, in a psychologically safe way. That doesn't mean you create a kumbaya, happy, clappy environment. Yes, it's an environment where people ask critical questions, but it's an environment where people can safely say, I don't know, I don't understand, help me here. That is how you influence and get the right kind of answers. And then lastly, and this is not me, this is Maya Angelou, that said that before people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
That sums it up. That really, really sums it up. I'm just going to quickly check if we have received any more WhatsApps. It seems Sean is the only one that have sent no other additional questions. But I think in the part about the influence question that I asked, without repeating what you ladies said, I mean, you've said a mouthful, and once again, there's a common thread, not only around this one question, but in all the questions that we've discussed. You know, there's a fundamental thread that's coming through, which we are all in agreement. But there's a saying, it reminds me of a saying, I don't remember who it's by, but it speaks around, you know, be a leader that people would like to listen to, and in the same breath, be a leader that people would like to talk to. Because Roze, once again, it speaks to the ability to listen. So if people know you're listening, you are a listener, they'd want to talk to you. But also, when we look at influence, you need to be that leader that people would want to also listen to at the same time. And really, that saying for me rounds up what you ladies have answered the influence question. So I do think that in the absence of additional questions that we haven't received from the crowd, guys, please continue participating regarding the polls question that are on the website. They really speak to, and there will be, you know, good guidance for us to be able to plan the topics that we need to address. And we did say this is the very first one. There's many more to come. These are conversations that I believe will lead to, you know, transformational actions that we as employees and employers we need to start doing in order to see that the industry adapting and reacting to these changes. We've done it before, we can do it. We've just got to gear up and have the willingness for us to be able to do that. So continue participating in the polls as well as the comment section, and connect with other people that are in the same industry as you, it is through the relationships, you know, that we can be influential, and we can also just assist each other. And I'm going to give the panel, you know, an opportunity to close off and reflect on this conversation today. And I've certainly really drawn a lot of wisdom and knowledge from my panelists. And thank you guys for making the time. And I think it's a start of many exciting conversations. And I, for one, will definitely, you know, keep track of more events like these. So I'm going to go back to the panelists and give you an opportunity just to close off, and let's round off this conversation. I think we've really had a good one. I don't know what your thoughts are, my beautiful panelists. Guys, you can choose who can start. Yeah, you know.
Okay. Let me kick off. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think there's so much that we can talk to. I probably just want to pick up on two last things for me. We didn't talk a lot about diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. But in a lot of respects, I hope that it came out in the conversation that if we are going to encourage people to think about the world of work not as a career ladder, but as a jungle gym, then you recognize that there are going to be people with very different walks of life that are going to be working side by side with you. As you were asking the question about collaboration, about networks, talking about high-performing teams or now cross-functional teams. We are working with people that are from a gig economy, so they don't even work for the company. They don't even have an employee number. We're going to be working with machines. So we're going to be working with people from other parts of the world also, as the world of digital really flattens borders and make place no longer that important. So I think cultural intelligence is extremely important for us to have also. So while we open our workplaces to diversity and to inclusion, and we talk about equity and we talk about belonging, understand that that is actually also a skill to recognize that it's not the golden rule, and this is what I teach in leadership at GIBS. It's not the golden rule that matters, and the golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated, which is the rule that we all live by. You know, this is our rule of ethics. Well, I want to replace it with a platinum rule, and for me, the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated. Because we all have very different lived experiences, and in fact, in a complex world, you need people to look at a problem, look at an opportunity with a different set of eyes. That's actually where innovation comes from. That's where growth comes from. That's where differentiation comes from. And that's where you get the power of the crowd and the power of the team. But it only happens if you create the psychological safety and the place of belonging, where everybody feels that this is where they can live their best life. This is where they can live their most authentic life. This is where they can be their most human and their most humane. If we can get that right, then we can actually make the world of work a place that is a place that isn't about success only, but it's a place where we can thrive. And that's what I ultimately would like to see.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. That's sort of where I'll end.
Thank you so much.
And the way you want to be treated, treat them the way they want to be treated.
Powerful statement there. Thank you so much, Dr. Roze. And I guess the students at GIBS are very lucky to have you as one of their own. So definitely I've taken a lot from what you've said. Just to comment as well, Sean, you've hit us again. We're feeling the love from you today. And Sean is saying to us, leaders also need to understand the various generation gaps, which touches exactly on what you've just said, Dr. Roze, the diversity and inclusion. Which diversity is the race, the gender, the generational gap. It is anything that, is obviously defined as different, and that requires us to be intentional around the inclusion. So the generational gap is quite an important one. Thank you so much for raising that, Sean. It absolutely forms part of diversity and inclusion, just like you've raised it, and I thank you for bringing that up. Pumeza, your closing statement for this conversation.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. I think for me, the pandemic has presented both challenges and opportunities for organizations. So it's now time to capitalize on those opportunities, as well as work together with employees to find solutions for the challenges. The biggest opportunity being that opportunity to define or redefine the culture of the organization. Make it a positive culture. Take employees along with you on the journey. Listen to them, as Roze has said. Hear from them. Get their input. And as leaders, it's important again to learn and unlearn so you can define or redefine the culture of the organization together with employees. And what I've also noticed over the past 2 years is that people now are looking for more than just a job. They also want an organization with a purpose that they identify with. You get that a lot when you're sitting across a candidate and you're asking them questions during an interview. They will tell you, I'm aligned with the values of your organization. They tell you, I like what your organization does or works to provide for the community around you. So as leaders, I think it's important to keep that going. And what is also very important is the employee experience. That's what I wanted to say, that people are looking for more than just a job or a salary and benefits. They want an experience, a positive experience. So again, it's important to work to define and redefine what is the culture that will give people the experience that they're looking for.
Thank you. Absolutely spot on there. It reminds me of the first answer that Roze gave earlier when she referred to employees, transforming and changing with the organization, and commitment being a huge part of it. People can only be committed if they experience that, and if their values are aligned, if they believe in it. And you've just brought it up again, because she touched on it earlier, and for me this just sums it up. The commitment that the employees will have in the adaptation and the evolution within the organization speaks to the employee experience and that culture and the alignment of values. Thank you for that, Pumeza. Last but not least, Yoni, you're still with us, I'm assuming. I'd like you to hear what your views are in closing off this conversation.
Thanks very much, Penny. I think the easiest is obviously to start off with Pumeza's point and just dwell on it a little bit. Having been in the recruitment industry, I have always been of the belief that I represent as both my clients, the corporate and the individual themselves. They are both my clients. Not one has power over the other. And it starts from the journey and the employee experience from the recruitment phase right up to their onboarding. And I have always been very sensitive to where a corporate acts as though a favor is being done for that talent. Canceling interviews on the last hour, canceling 30 minutes before, not being cognizant of what their current earnings are from the beginning and speaking 3 months or 3.5 months later after 7 interviews that the candidate is too expensive. I've always been very vocal about that already is such brand damage to your own corporate name and also the palate of that very employee. And you have no idea what that brand damage is to your organization. And I think that companies need to always be cognizant of that, and leadership needs to partner with HR for good turnaround times from a candidate experience perspective. Moving on from that candidate experience and touching on Sean's point about the generational gap. Within that generational gap, it's also introduced where we've got the younger talent that is not wanting to be married to a job for life like our parents were. And we need to be cognizant of that and still be able to upskill them, because ultimately it contributes to the wider skills of South Africa, and not be selfish that if I develop this person, I may lose them. That is irrelevant, because that person can come back and work for your organization 10 years later. That generational gap also leads to the tough questions around who is in the leadership of that organization. It's not about just choosing the job, it's choosing the leadership, the values of that company, as well as touched on today about being a good corporate citizen when you're a company. What sustainable projects are you running? What are you doing for SMEs? What are you doing for developmental purposes? That's the kind of conversations right now that candidates want to have, and they want to know before they will even put their CV forward for a role. So it's almost like the top talent is able to choose the company that they wish to work on. And the bar has been set higher in terms of now the criteria which they use to make that very, very decision. And it includes organizational values, as per we discussed this afternoon. So leadership, when they also appoint managers, they need to know that they're aligned to their values, so that whatever talent is brought on, it's talent that is going to speak to that and is going to promote that as well. And then I go back to my initial point, and this is more addressed now to the talent itself this afternoon, where I'm saying, what are you doing for yourself to presenting yourself as the full package? What are you doing to upskill yourself? That degree is not long enough, is not big enough anymore. What are you doing to develop yourself? What other competencies are you showing me and demonstrating that make you the better candidate to Yoni? And that's what you should be asking yourself every year. What am I planning to do this year? Even if it's a 2-week course, even if it's a 1-week course, but as long as you keep on empowering yourself. It's not only a responsibility upon organizations to empower their people educationally and in competence levels and skills. It's also an individual decision and an individual choice. So self-development is going to be very key from the talent that we face, we place, we look at, we consider. So I think with that being said, my last point is we need to build a culture of trust within organizations and their employees. Employees are very quick and easy to want to leave, not because they are being paid less, but because they've lost trust within their leadership. And once trust is lost between a leader and his people, the team development, the team spirit, the team dynamics, all of these things kind of change. So we need to always embody that trust as part of what we do with our teams and our people. I think that would probably be my summary of today. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Yoni. Thank you, ladies, for spending this afternoon with us and really sharing your insights. Thank you so much. Guys, so much has been said in this conversation, and I think for me, without repeating, what the ladies have said, there's a few things that I take away from this conversation, and self-mastery for me, came across in this conversation today. It's very important to understand oneself, because that will help you understand what it is that you need to do to thrive in an environment and make the decisions about the journey that you need to take as a person within any organization. But also relationship building. It is important, and it's become quite a challenge in the new ways of work, but it really is something that is important that we need to be intentional about, and because it will allow us to build that skill of influence. It will also allow us to connect more than just being about the task, and that really does then create the trust and create safe space for individuals to engage. Flexibility, adaptability, those are the things that are coming through around from this conversation, and it is truly clear that there is an evolution of skills required in the banking industry, and there's always been, and there will continue to be. And this simply means that be cognizant, be aware, and be willing to do what is necessary. And lastly, have a conversation with yourself around your own career development, and take ownership of shaping your career, And you know, if you don't do that, then obviously it will be done to you. And that's at least what I'm getting, what I got from this conversation. It's been really such a pleasure to host this event, guys. This is one of the very first, and there's many more to come. I really hope that we've got the comments and we'll on the site as well as the polls. Tell us what we need to talk about, and we will definitely attend to it, because those are the topics that we as a community need to have in order to shape this industry of ours. Dr. Roze specifically said there's lots of resistance in this industry, and we can do what needs to be done. And yeah, let's hear what we need to do so that we can empower ourselves. I think this is it. It's been a great pleasure to host. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. See you next time at our second webinar by IOBSA. Thank you so much. We will now have a video of closing from our chairperson, Jill. And yeah, have a good one.
Thank you.
Sharon Feldsman, CEO of the IOBSA, thanks you for joining our webinar. We also wish to thank our esteemed panelists for sharing their insights and expertise on the changing world of work as it pertains to banking in South Africa. As we close off, take a moment to appreciate your own contribution to making a difference in the banking industry. We look forward to seeing you at our next event.